right. Good to see everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Thanks everybody for jumping on. My name is Robert, Chief Revenue Officer for BW&CO. We're a grant writing firm based here in Houston, Texas, providing three essential services. Number one being grant writing. Number two, which we'll talk a little bit about today in pretty good depth, is business development in terms of securing an end user or customer within the federal government. And then lastly is award management. As we've seen a need for, especially now, customers to be sought out in the federal government to really hone in a technological description of what's desired, the defense mission need, and similar information around that. We've seen the importance of showcasing our capabilities as well as giving general information out, which we'll do both today, about what it looks like to pursue a Department of Defense or other federal agency. Obviously, Department of War has a pretty large budget, and there's lots of military, non-military use cases within that in terms of operating systems. And so I wanted to hand it over to Josiah, who operates as our Chief Executive Officer, as well as our Department of Defense and War liaison, and helps all of our clients internally secure meetings, LOIs, MOUs, CRADAs with different members of the military. So before jumping in, we do represent BW&CO. You can find out more information by going to www.bwcoconsulting.com. We would love to entertain conversations or questions around pursuing grants or contracts on the federal level, anything in revolving around technology development. And during this webinar, it will be recorded. There will be slides presented, and both of those documents, the recording and the slides, will be sent after the call later today, hopefully by end of day today. If you have any questions, although the chat will be disabled, you're welcome to submit any questions you may have in the Q&A function, which you can find in the lower taskbar. And we'll plan to open up a few minutes at the end to answer some questions. In the meantime, I'll hand it over to Josiah. We'll go from there.
All right. Thanks so much, Robert. So the topic that we're discussing today is deep tech in the Department of War, how to find funding and product market fit. And what we hope to accomplish by the end of this webinar, you will be able to identify whether your technology can be funded by the Department of War, and to determine what steps you need to take next. That's my goals. Let's get going. First off, some proof. So this is data taken from usaspending.gov, and what it shows is the number of Department of War contracts that have been awarded to small businesses, which would include startups, for research and development only. So only research and development activities. And as you can see, we're at about $8 billion over the last several years. Now, what's not included in this is small businesses that are working with primes as subawardees. That would not be included in here. Also, there's some other contracting mechanisms like OTAs and others where a lot of times that data doesn't get transferred into this. So 8 billion is the floor, and there's probably a lot more that actually goes out the door to small businesses like yourselves and startups like yourself. So there's plenty of funding out there, and this is the first reason why you should be interested in the Department of War. They have a lot of funding. In addition to that, though, there's some additional benefits to the Department of War and traction that you get by getting contracts with them. First is these funds are all across the full technology readiness level spectrum, from early TRLs to later stage TRLs to technology that's ready to be deployed. This is non-dilutive capital, so they're not typically taking any equity in your company. And I would say almost never would they do that before the new administration's changed the game a little bit on that, but typically they're not doing it with small businesses, only larger businesses. So it's typically non-dilutive capital. A third is it's validation for your customers, and also could open the door for dual use investors. Let's say that you're a biotech company, you're going after investors, VCs that invest in biotech. Well, now that you found a defense application, that opens the door for all of these dual use defense focused investors that might now take a look at you and increase your likelihood of funding there. So additional reasons why, in my opinion, every company, every deep tech company should entertain funding from the Department of War. And I'll go a step further. Really, the hard truth, in my opinion, if you're a deep tech founder or CEO and you haven't yet explored Department of War funding, you're not fully doing your job. Now, keyword there being explored. I'm not saying that, for everyone, they need to make this an integral part of their strategy. But have you explored it? Have you looked into it? And if you haven't, we're about to go through what that would look like. I justify my statement by this. Imagine there was a strategic investor that would invest at any stage, pre-seed, seed, Series A, Series B, and they'll take 0% equity, right? You're not giving them any piece of your company for their investment dollars. In addition, this strategic investor could become your largest long-term customer. I mean, they could buy what you're building in the millions and tens of millions, hundreds of millions, maybe even billions of dollars range. And third, they would vouch for you to other investors and customers. Imagine there was this magical strategic investor like this. Would you talk to them? Would you try to talk to them? Would you see if you're aligned with what they're looking for? The answer is, and should be, yes, you would. And that's one way to view the Department of War. This strategic, kind of unique investor that can add a lot of value to you. And it's, again, worth a conversation. It's worth exploring. And if you haven't done that yet, now's the time to get started. Now, there's all sorts of excuses, and all of these have, there's truth to each and every one of these, right? Oh, it takes forever working with the Department of War. The process is so complicated. We don't know who the real buyer is. We talk to this person, they like it, and then, it turns out they're not who we should have been talking to. We don't have the right connections. I know there's a fit, but I don't know how to contact the right people. I've heard they like our tech, but they said they don't have funding. They love it, but they just don't have money for us. Or I hear this all the time. I don't have a military background, therefore I can't effectively sell to the military. Now, while I'll give it to you that the Department of War is very complex, and certainly having a military background helps, it's not essential to selling to the Department of War. Think about it. If you have a technology that's relevant for a big enterprise corporation, let's say I'm here in Houston, let's say Chevron, you're not going to say, "Oh, I didn't come from Chevron, so therefore I can't sell to Chevron." Right? Doesn't make any sense. That's helpful but not required. So, in short, all of these excuses, while there's some truth to them, they don't have to be true for you. You can overcome each of these things, and I'll show you how. From my experience, before we get into the details, it's helpful to reframe our thinking around the Department of War. So a lot of people I talk to, they kind of view the Department of War as your friend's rich uncle. He's this guy that you hope you see him, kind of, at a party, and you ask your friend to give you an introduction to him, and he's loaded. So, you kind of bring, a little prototype or a little deck that you want to show him and hope that he invests in your company, or hope that he, gives you loads of money, etc. And that's how people sometimes approach the Department of War. Hence, I don't know the right people. I don't know how to get access to them. And then also, oh, it's taking forever. It's taking a long time, etc. Because we have this expectation that Uncle Sam is like our friend's rich uncle. And the truth is, in most cases, he's just not. Sure, there's exceptional stories that are outliers, but for most people, it's not. What a much better frame of mind is the Department of War is a large enterprise customer. And to show some proof of this, if you look at the number of employees and the top companies in the world by number of employees, you'll see that the Department of War, has about 3 million employees. Now, that's including both active duty, civilians, National Guard, right? But still, it serves the purpose to show, hey, this is just a really, really large enterprise customer. Hence, why there can be a lot of issues when, just like if you were selling to another really, really large enterprise customer. So it's not that the Department of War is a bad customer, which I've heard that all the time. I've heard that from people inside of the Department of War. They're ashamed that, oh, we're just a bad customer. They're just a complicated customer, and it takes a different approach, a strategic approach, in order to get traction there. I'm not saying it won't be frustrating. I'm not saying you won't hit roadblocks, but it's you're much better prepared for those roadblocks and prepared to find solutions around those roadblocks when you realize, hey, this is a large enterprise customer, and I just need to think about with that, keep that frame of mind. So how do you sell to the Department of War? And I say sell here, right? We're talking about deep tech. So before we sell, I'm including in that, selling the idea to get funding, for research and development, all along the TRL spectrum. But how do you do that? Well, it's really simple, actually. You find customers, and I'm using that very broadly. That could be end users, it could be internal champions, but essentially it's people inside of the Department of War that really care about the problem that your technology solves. You find those people, and then after you find them, you find funding that those people may have access to or pull for, and then you find a contracting vehicle through which to process this funding, right? And again, very similar to an enterprise sale, right? You've got to find those internal champions. They've got to have money in their budget. And then ultimately you sign a contract with that company. Very, very similar to the Department of War, just with some nuances. And granted, it's a bit more complex than it is for normal enterprise customers. But the categories are still very, very similar. So the key point, if you're trying to engage, again, I'll pull Chevron, trying to engage Chevron, right? The first step is, how do I find those customers and those end users? And I'll pause here to say this is a huge mistake we see a lot of companies making. And it stops them sometimes from even taking that first step because they say, well, I don't understand. I've heard that Department of War does budgeting really weird. I don't understand that. I've heard about colors of money. I don't understand that. I've heard about, contracting vehicles in the FAR and all these bad things that can happen. I don't understand that. And those things are very, very important to understand at a certain point. But the main thing that you should be concerned about right now is, are there people that want what I'm developing and what I have inside the Department of War? That's the most important question to start with. That's where you should be laser focused at first. And then as you do that, you'll be able during these phases 2 and 3 to entertain some of the other things, pull in expertise as needed to help you navigate some of those more complex things. But don't, as we see many companies, get so overwhelmed by the complex things that you stop just focusing on getting in touch with the right people and finding those customers inside of the Department of War. So, key question then, if finding customers is the first step, how do I find customers? We like the acronym VERIFY, and this is something we use with our clients. We help you work through to make this as easy as possible. So first of all, you're going to verify your corporate goals. Then you're going to establish your key differentiators. Third, you're going to research viable DOW use cases, Department of War use cases. Fourth, you'll initiate customer discovery. That should turn into 5, you find your product defense market fit. And then once you find that fit, you yield and scale results. So we're going to now break down each one of these and show you what's involved in this framework, in these steps. So verify your corporate goals. What is your long-term commercial objective with the Department of War? Are you trying to sell a product, provide a service, license the technology to someone else that then may provide that product or service to the Department of War? These are really important questions to, at a high level, understand what your strategy is or what your potential strategies are. How open are you to these things? Additionally, especially in the Department of War, let's say you're making some sort of subsystem. Well, you're probably not going to sell that subsystem directly to the Department of War. Maybe you're going to work with some incumbents in the space, some prime contractors, and sell to them. These all affect how you follow the next step. So it's important to answer these questions up front. One I don't have on here, but I also think is really important is, how far are you willing to pivot from your commercial use case? If the answer is not far at all, that's fine. There still may be potential for you in the Department of War, but it's an important question for you as a company to answer up front. Then, two, we establish differentiators. In other words, what's your unique superpower? Sorry, mistake. What will we be able to do that no one else can do? And I say will be able to do because it's not about where your technology is today. It's, hey, when we are TRL 9, when our technology works, here's all the benefits that we think it will provide, right? And what will be unique about that? What commercial traction do we have that no one else has? So have you been solving this problem in the commercial sector? Maybe it's a very niche, unique sector, and there's not other people in your space solving it. That's great. That's a superpower. That experience is a superpower. What compelling data do you have? So again, especially if you're earlier TRL, what data do you think, if you show to the right scientific stakeholders inside of the Department of War, are they going to find convincing? These are all elements of your superpower, and what we do is then try to combine this into some really unique, a statement of here are the things that only we can do. Next, what we want to do is match your superpower to a urgent, pertinent problem that the Department of War has. So we call this process researching viable Department of War use cases. So we want to find evidence of a broken leg problem that only your superpower can fix. Ultimately, we're trying to get to a statement like this: the Department of War has an urgent need for X, Y, and Z. Critical minerals is a huge topic right now. And because of our unique ability to process X, Y, and Z critical minerals, that's 30% more efficient, 50% more cost effective, et cetera. We are the only company that can assist with this urgent problem and solve it in the way that we can. Right? So this is a great use case when we can say something like this. Now, I want to clarify broken leg. What does that mean? What's a broken leg problem? Well, what I mean by that is if you had a broken leg today, what are you going to do today? What's the rest of your day going to look like? You're going to go to the hospital, right? You're going to get a cast on that broken leg, get some crutches, get it looked at, right? Your whole plan for the rest of the day is destroyed because you've got to deal with this broken leg. It's incredibly painful. You can't walk on it. You can't operate, right? We want to find a problem like that inside of the Department of War. It's something that ideally they're feeling acute, strong pain or fear because this problem is unresolved. Now, contrast this to what a lot of us can get fixated on, which is a problem like heart disease, right? Heart disease is a real problem. It's the #1 killer of Americans. It's a huge, huge issue, but it's slow. It acts really, really, really slow, right? You don't really necessarily feel it. And so all of us know, hey, if we're going to lower our risk for heart disease, we need to diet and exercise. Yet very few of us do that. We don't take action, right? And so problems that you may see a fit in the Department of War for your technology, but it's not that acute pain like a broken leg. It's more like heart disease. And we want to avoid heart disease problems because those are the ones that can actually lead to a lot of frustration down the road. You talk to people and they're saying, yeah, this is generally aligned with what we want to do. But then as you continue, it never ends up with funding. It never ends up with real traction because it's just not that urgent of a problem. So how do you find this? How do you find evidence of a broken leg problem? Well, the answer is there's lots of different places. And I would encourage you, depending on your technology, to just look, use AI to help you search and find all sorts of, through all of these different sources. So a few places that we routinely look, what has Department of War funded in the past, right? Maybe they're trying to solve this problem, but through other means, other approaches. Are there news articles about upcoming initiatives or shifts in focus that would align with your technology? Are there any areas of past research? So some Department of War labs will sometimes publish different research about what they've been working on, or they'll try to license technologies, and from that you can see, oh, okay, here's kind of the area they're working, and we understand that, and so the guy that worked on that, he would be a great person for us to connect to that's going to understand this problem, right? Broad agencies announcements, other solicitations like SBIRs. These are just a few places that you can look. One place that I encourage you to be aware of is the Department of War puts out critical technology areas, and this is the latest one from late last year. And so you can see probably broader, if you're not familiar with the Department of War, broader than you may have thought. So applied artificial intelligence, right? Very, very broad category. Biomanufacturing, contested logistics technologies, quantum and battlefield information dominance, scaled directed energy, scaled hypersonics. So these are 6 areas. It used to be 14, and then they honed in on these 6, this latest revision. And so if your technology deals with any of these areas, high level, I can tell you, hey, there might be potential fit here. Now you need to hone in on how agencies are pursuing these initiatives and go deeper there. Okay, so after we have some assumptions now about a potential DoD use case, we want to initiate customer discovery. We want to validate the use case assumption by talking to Department of War stakeholders that should care about that problem. Again, so like how do you get in contact with these people? How do you talk to them? How do you verify the problem? One is your network. I can't tell you how many times we found people had people inside their network that were military. They didn't really realize what they did, and they ended up being a really great connection, or they knew someone that would be a great connection for our companies to talk to. Front doors. So a lot of the military has started putting up these ways for you to submit ideas to them through different forms. Now, again, some people have done this and they've been frustrated because they hadn't gotten a response or didn't get the response they wanted. But for our experiences, can actually be a very, very effective mechanism to organize your ideas, organize value, submit that. And then if you don't get a response, you don't get the response back that you want, to then follow up with the people that gave you that response and get a good next step, the next contact that they can refer you to. Department of War research labs. So again, you find a researcher in your area that probably cares about this problem, reaching out to them and asking to have a conversation. And in that conversation, validating your assumption. People mentioned in news articles, traditional defense contractors can also be very helpful if that fits in with your broader strategy. I would recommend be clear in your messaging. I'm reaching out because I saw you specialize in blank, right? Show that you did your homework and they're the right person for you to be talking to. We have a novel material that blank, right? Here's our superpower that we believe could blank solve this broken leg problem that you have. Could we meet for 30 minutes to share our capabilities? Now, one highlight here is, although this is customer discovery, generally the Department of War could be a little hesitant to just say, hey, here's all the problems that we have that we want you to solve, right? They generally don't do that. And so we found an effective way is for you to share your capabilities and then ask them, which of these capabilities are you most interested in, right? Which, we would love to do a pilot project with you. What aspect of our technology, stands out the most, et cetera, something like that. And then often that will allow you to kind of read between the lines and see where they see value in that in your technology is probably where they have a broken leg problem, right? And then I would add, be respectfully persistent. I bet people that said, yeah, I sent them an email and they never responded. Well, that was one email, have you ever not responded to one email, right? So just respectful follow-up, emails, phone calls. And again, because we're phrasing this not as, hey, I need funding, can you help me find funding for my tech? It's, hey, I've got a solution for a problem I think you have. Could we discuss it, essentially, right? Then it enables you to be very polite, very respectful, but still very persistent in your follow-up until you get a response. Okay, so the next step, as you're initiating customer discovery, you're having talks with people, and you're learning a lot through this process. Once you hear 5 key stakeholders confirm there is need, in other words, the problem you think you're solving is a real problem, they like your approach to it, they think your solution could solve it, then you found product defense market fit, right? There is real fit, there is real opportunity here. A few reminders here. Don't stop at one stakeholder. Now, five, sometimes it's just not possible, but it's a good target because one stakeholder, they may love it, they may be excited. Five stakeholders, we know that there's enough alignment that's going to get you through, someone moving from this position to that position, right? And it really is a need. Um, Ask questions to understand the various levels of decision making involved. Long term, who are the other key stakeholders that would have to have buy-in for a technology to be adopted, right? You got one stakeholder that's interested, you can ask them this question. They'll help you understand who else you need to talk to. Um, be honest with yourself. Do they really need what you have? Are you solving a broken leg problem? Or are you solving a heart disease problem? And while heart disease is so important, it's probably not going to move the needle for the Department of War in most cases. And you need to pivot and really find an acute broken leg problem. Okay, so now that you have this product defense market fit, you need to find funding. Okay. Now, I can't tell you how many times I've been in meetings and they've said, yeah, this is so fantastic, but we don't have funding or we won't have funding for 6 months or a year or whatever. And hey, sometimes that's absolutely true. But keep in mind that that person, they're probably thinking about one or two mechanisms that they use, and they have no idea of all the other mechanisms that are out there. And so if they don't have funding, it's a signal for you to go do your homework and see if there's any other funding opportunities that you could use in order to fund the work that they're interested in. Um, Second, then, is find a contracting vehicle. So some contracts take time. There's no way around that. But generally, a good rule of thumb is that if this person's saying like, "Hey, this is going to take 6 months or 9 months or 12 months," it's worthwhile to see, are there any other mechanisms that are going to be a little bit faster that you could utilize? Now, this is more nuanced, it takes a little bit more expertise, but it's a question worth asking. May not be the case, but if that means you get funding 3 months from now or 6 months from now instead of 12 months or 18 months from now, it's obviously worth asking those questions. And again, this most likely is not, you're not asking the person in the Department of War that you're interfacing with. This is you doing your own research and then getting help from industry or consultants in the space if you can't find something and you want to double check. Third, find others with that broken leg problem and repeat. So the benefit of Department of War being so massive is that if I find fit in the Army, hey, could I find fit in the Navy? Could I find fit in the Air Force, right? And other groups as well. And so you kind of rinse and repeat with talking to similar people across these different agencies to build your traction. All right, last slide. Here's the summary. Department of War is not a rich uncle. It is a large enterprise customer. Funding follows product defense market fit. Find a broken leg problem only your superpower can fix. Validate with real stakeholders, then secure funding and scale. And again, every deep tech founder or CEO should explore Department of War funding. Either you should do it, you should assign your best team member, maybe a co-founder to do it, or you can pay someone to do it. And guys, we've really tried to make it super easy for you to get a high level idea of if there's potential here. We offer a free assessment where we'll say, hey, there's potential, here's what it is, or hey, we don't see any potential ourselves. So good luck, you can try it, but we don't think there's anything there. Then after that free assessment, if you'd like us to assist, we have packages starting as low as $2,500 to help you do this. Now, in comparison with other defense firms in our space, that's a fraction of the cost of many others that often come with 3-month, 6-month, or even year-long commitments. So if you're interested in that, feel free to email Robert on our team who can share more with you.
All right, perfect. Thanks for the overview and discussion. I've got just two questions here as we wrap up. Just as we kind of finish things here on the webinar. Again, these slides in the call recording for the webinar will be sent by email shortly after this discussion. If you guys are looking to utilize our services to help with this process, you can schedule a consultation with me and we'll go over the evaluation and where we think there could be possible use cases as well. Question number one, does DOW allow international subcontractors as an example from Israel?
Potentially, yes. It really depends. Are you making a weapon system or are you making a novel type of backpack? You know what I mean? So it really just does depend in a case by case basis.
Yeah, great. Second question here, does the DoW have an annual budget that is set aside for futuristic technology explorations? If it does it get allocated across different departments like AFRL, DARPA, Navy, etc., or is it in a common pool that anyone can tap into based on the requirements?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the short answer is yes, there's going to be different types of money that is allocated to different TRL levels. You could think of it that way, right? So some more for exploratory early research. And yes, generally that's going to get distributed across multiple different agencies, let's say multiple different buckets, right? So again, with our process, I would encourage you, sometimes if you hear of funding, sure, go chase it down. But I think the key place to start is where do we see evidence that someone would want your technology? Maybe someone's researching in a similar area. They funded projects like that in the past. That's the best sniff test to see, okay, then that place probably has some sort of funding for what I'm looking for. But again, the first step is to just validate that fit. And then we can chase down where the funding is going to come from. I will also say there's other flexible vehicles that are cross agency. So we've got a customer here in the Army, and we've got there could be a way for us to use a funding mechanism from somewhere else to fund the work that we want to do with the Army, even though he's saying he doesn't have money in his budget.
Okay, great. Awesome. Well, that's our time for today. Thanks everybody for joining us. We'll send an email here shortly recapping everything, but happy hunting. We'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks.